If you had asked me then, I would have said our marriage was tired, not broken. The kind of tired that comes from two people running on parallel tracks for too long, trying to keep everything afloat. Work, bills, a toddler who woke up twice a night, and a house that never stayed clean. We weren't angry. We weren't unfaithful. We were just quiet. Too quiet. The silence didn't arrive suddenly. It crept in, like water leaking beneath a door, soaking everything slow enough that you don't notice until your socks are wet. I missed her, not in a dramatic way. I missed the weight of her hand brushing mine when we passed in the hallway, the half-laugh she gave when something surprised her. Those little moments vanished one by one, replaced with logistical exchanges and lukewarm reassurances. At some point, I started talking to myself in the car on the way home, rehearsing things I wanted to say to her. But I never did, because when I opened the front door and saw her in the kitchen or curled on the couch, something always felt off-limits, like I'd become a guest in my own home. So I suggested therapy, not because I believed 1 hour a week would fix everything, but because I had nothing left to try. I still loved her. That wasn't the problem. The problem was the distance and how naturally it had grown. Like ivy. And I didn't know if she even saw it. She said yes. Not hesitantly, not emotionally. Just yes. As if I'd asked her to reschedule a dentist appointment. I told myself that was a good sign, that she didn't argue, didn't push back. That meant hope, didn't it? I did the research, sent her a list. We chose someone nearby, well-reviewed, professional. Dr. Lucas Harland. His profile spoke of emotional mapping and facilitating realignment in disconnected relationships. It sounded like a marketing phrase, but I clung to it like a promise. Our first session was quiet. Not awkward, just measured. He welcomed us into a softly lit office with gray walls and warm chairs. The room smelled faintly of wood polish and mint. He didn't rush. He listened. He asked open-ended questions and let us speak in circles. It was fine. Neutral. Emily, however, seemed immediately drawn to him. Not in any inappropriate way, nothing obvious. But she responded to him. Her shoulders loosened. Her voice softened. When he spoke, she nodded. When I did, she glanced sideways, like fact-checking me in real time. I noticed, but said nothing. I didn't want to be one of those husbands, suspicious, defensive, threatened by a man whose job was to listen. I told myself this discomfort was just part of the process. Growth always starts with friction, right? We kept going. Weekly sessions. She seemed more willing to open up there than she ever did at home. And yet, somehow, we talked less outside those walls. I felt like I was giving more, reaching more, and getting further away. One evening, after our third session, she made a suggestion. Calmly, smoothly, like it had just occurred to her. I think I'd like to try some one-on-one time with him, just to explore some personal things. Childhood stuff. Before we keep working as a couple. I agreed. Why wouldn't I? If that helped her reconnect, then it helped us. That's what I told myself. But that night, as she typed something into her phone with the faintest smile, not quite a grin, just the shadow of something private, I felt a shift I couldn't name. And something in me whispered, "You opened the door. Now watch what walks through it." The first week she went alone, I felt oddly optimistic. She came back from the session quiet but calm, like someone who'd spent an hour near water. I didn't press her. I assumed whatever had been stirred would settle on its own, and I didn't want to muddy the surface by asking too many questions. By the second week, she stopped mentioning what they talked about altogether. Not in a guarded way. Just omission. She walked in, put her bag down, made herself tea, scrolled through her phone. The therapy became background noise, something scheduled and sealed off from everything else. The third week, she looked up from her coffee and said, "Ryan, I think it's better if I keep going on my own. I just feel like I open up more without you there." She wasn't being unkind. She said it gently, even appreciatively. But the words still stung. I nodded. What else could I do? "That's okay," I said. "If it helps, then good." She smiled, and I hated how much that smile still affected me. So I stopped attending. And just like that, I was no longer part of the healing process I had initiated. I thought maybe it was temporary. Maybe she'd circle back once she worked through whatever personal things she needed to. But weeks passed, and nothing circled back. If anything, we grew quieter. Not hostile, not even cold. Just distant in a way that didn't look like a fight. Just a quiet ending neither of us would name. I'd ask her how her sessions went, and she'd shrug. "Fine." Once, she added. He's really helping me see things clearly. That stuck with me longer than it should have. Because it wasn't what she said, it was the way she said it. Calm, confident, as if she'd made sense of something and I wasn't part of it. One night, I noticed she'd changed her phone passcode. I asked her casually, not accusing, why. She said her therapist had suggested more personal boundaries to reduce anxiety. Another night, I saw a new book on the nightstand. The author's name was familiar. Then I realized Lucas Harland, our therapist. He'd written a book. She was reading it like scripture, underlining passages in pencil, folding corners of pages. I flipped through it while she was in the shower. One line was underlined twice. True emotional rebirth requires permission to let go of what no longer aligns with your authentic self. I had no idea if that was about me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been demoted to something she needed to let go of. I started staying later at work. Not out of resentment, just inertia. Home felt less like a destination and more like a waiting room. We spoke in headlines. She kissed our son goodnight, but I rarely saw her kiss him with both hands anymore. The way she used to, that little squeeze that said, "I'm here. I'm yours." Even Max began to sense the change. One morning, as we were putting on his shoes, he asked, "Is Mommy mad at you?" "No," I said. "Just tired." But even I wasn't sure anymore who I was lying to. By the end of the second month, I had stopped asking about her sessions. Not out of respect, but because I already knew the answer. Fine. Helpful. I cried a little. Always the same 3 responses, rotated like clothes from a shrinking closet. But while the words stayed the same, Emily didn't. She was shifting in ways I couldn't explain, couldn't trace to any single moment. She walked differently, lighter, more upright. Her eyes were clearer, her voice more certain. On paper, it looked like therapy was working. But it didn't feel like healing. It felt like erasure. Like she was sanding down every part of herself that once connected to me. One night, I heard her laugh from the kitchen, not just a chuckle, but the kind of full, open laugh I hadn't heard in months. I almost smiled from the next room. But when I walked in, she stopped mid-sentence. The phone in her hand disappeared into her back pocket like a reflex. I asked who she was talking to. She said it was just a video. Something dumb. I nodded, pretending to believe it. The lie was small. Almost nothing. But it clung to me all night. Then came the late returns. She'd leave for her sessions mid-afternoon and not come back until after dark. Traffic, she'd say. Or errands. Once, she said she'd stop to walk and reflect. When I asked where, she paused a second too long before answering, by the lake. I almost asked which one. We don't live near a lake, but stopped myself. I started noticing other things. A new necklace I'd never seen before. A sweater that didn't match anything she owned. Once, when I picked up her jacket from the hallway hook, there was a faint trace of cologne I didn't recognize. Not perfume. Not mine. Something sharper. It was around then that I stopped sleeping properly. I began tracking small data points in my head. Nothing solid. Just moments. Patterns. The way she'd touch her face when she lied. The way she'd keep her phone face down now, even when it buzzed. The new passcode. The way she didn't ask how my day was anymore. And then Max. He was playing with his blocks on the floor when I asked if he wanted pancakes or cereal. Absent-mindedly, without looking up, he said, "Cereal. Like when Mommy eats cereal in the office with Dr. Lucas." I froze. "What do you mean, buddy?" He shrugged, still playing. "They eat cereal there. She said he buys the ones with the tiger. I like those too." There was no reason for her to be in his office outside of sessions, let alone eating cereal there, let alone telling our son about it. I said nothing, just nodded and smiled. But something inside me locked into place. The next day, I casually asked her if she wanted me to pick up groceries. I offered to grab cereal, the kind with the tiger. She stared at me for a moment too long. "Why that kind?" she asked. I smiled. "Just a craving." That night, I checked her bag while she was in the shower. I hated myself for it, but did it anyway. Nothing obvious, just her planner, half filled with scribbles and post-its. But one note caught my eye. LH, sat at 11, confirm with him, not through office. Not through office. I closed the notebook and put it back. She came out moments later, hair wet, humming softly. She kissed Max goodnight and walked past me like nothing had changed. But it had. I no longer knew if I was married or just sharing a house with a woman I used to trust. And the worst part was, I couldn't prove a thing. Not yet. Some people think betrayal is loud, that it crashes in like thunder, leaving destruction in its wake. But mine came in through Wi-Fi signals, payment receipts, and quiet reminders left behind in synced calendars. I wasn't tech-savvy, not really. I paid bills online, updated my phone when it told me to, and ignored most apps unless they were for work. But years in IT had taught my friend Jason a few useful tricks. And I knew that if I asked him for help, he wouldn't ask too many questions. I just need to check some logins, I said, carefully leaving out why. Jason raised an eyebrow. Passwords? Activity? Deleted messages? Whatever you can find, I replied. It started with the bank. We had a joint account. I rarely checked it. Emily handled groceries, household expenses, most day-to-day stuff. But when I looked now, the pattern glared back at me. A flower delivery service charged 3 separate times. A boutique coffee subscription billed to an unfamiliar name. A food delivery app, orders placed in locations far from her usual route, including one near Harlan's office on a Saturday. The real punch came when I filtered purchases by time. Some of them were made during what she told me were therapy sessions. Not before or after. Right in the middle of those supposed emotional breakthroughs. I sent the screenshots to Jason. Minutes later, he called. You need to see this. He pulled metadata from her cloud backups, calendar entries, reminders, and search history she thought she deleted. There were names I didn't recognize, bookmarked addresses for hotels near downtown, and one calendar entry titled simply, Dinner with L. It was marked private. Recurring weekly. I stared at the screen and said nothing. Jason hesitated. You sure you want me to keep going? I did. He dug into the voice memos stored in her app. Nothing direct, just snippets. Her rehearsing phrases like, I don't owe anyone explanations, and this isn't about him. It's about me. Therapeutic affirmations, maybe. But they didn't sound like someone trying to repair a marriage. They sounded like someone justifying an exit. Still, there was no message from Harlan. No direct proof. No photos. No signed confession. And yet, everything pointed there. The receipts. The calendar. The shift in her behavior. The way she said his name now. So naturally Lucas said this. Lucas thinks that. When I mentioned his name at dinner one night, she flinched, just slightly. But it was enough. I began testing her. Softly. Carefully. Did you end up rescheduling with Lucas this week? Yeah, we moved it to Thursday. But the delivery tracker showed an order to his address that Thursday evening. For 2. Pasta and wine. I started keeping a file. Not out of revenge. Out of necessity. Every note, every receipt, every log entry, I stored them under one folder, buried deep inside my laptop. I labeled it with a neutral name, utilities_backup. Because that's what I was doing now. Backing up. Preparing for the moment when guessing wouldn't be enough anymore. When I'd need something real, undeniable. And in the quiet of that folder, I saw what was coming. The truth didn't need a confession. It was already here. I'd spent weeks looking for something tangible, a receipt, a message, a mistake. But Emily was careful. Too careful. Every trace of her growing distance had been tucked away behind neutral smiles and therapeutic language. She wasn't hiding an affair in the traditional sense. She was hiding a life I wasn't part of. So I changed my approach. Her car had a USB port under the dashboard, right where she used to charge her phone. I bought a small audio recorder, slim, discreet, motion-activated. It clicked on when someone sat behind the wheel and picked up every word spoken within the cabin. I told myself it was paranoia. But when I retrieved the device 3 days later and transferred the file to my laptop, the first thing I heard was her voice, unfiltered, unguarded. She was talking softly, laughing. You always know what to say, she said. I don't even have to explain it anymore. A pause. Then a male voice, low and familiar. You don't have to. I see you. That's enough. It was Lucas. His tone was casual, affectionate, but it sent a chill straight through me. He sounded like someone who didn't just know her, but owned a part of her I never saw. Emily again. It's strange. I used to feel guilty. Now I just feel free. Isn't that awful? Lucas, no. It means you're finally living. Another pause. Then she whispered, I think I love you. I stopped the recording. Then I played it again. And again. The first time, I felt numb. The second time, my throat tightened. By the third, I couldn't decide whether to smash the laptop or sit in the silence it created. She said it. Out loud. Without shame. To the man I had paid, trusted, invited into our most fragile moments. This wasn't emotional confusion. This wasn't therapy gone too far. This was betrayal, not impulsive, but cultivated. Quiet. Intentional. I opened my file, utilities_backup, and added the audio. Created a new folder inside, primary evidence. Then I sat there, alone in the dark, and remembered something else. Weeks ago, I had scrolled through her planner and seen a name half erased. Ray. I didn't think much of it then. But now, I searched her contacts and found a message thread. Archived. Hidden. The first message read, "You were right. He sees only what I let him see. Ray, they always do. Until they don't." The last one from Emily. Lucas says I'm evolving. I feel it. Finally becoming who I was supposed to be. It wasn't just me she left behind. It was herself. And in her place, she built a version of Emily that didn't need permission, explanation, or consequence. But that version forgot something. I still had the receipts. There's a moment after betrayal, after the blood rush and the disbelief, where stillness settles in. Not peace. Not acceptance. Just stillness. And in that stillness, something cold begins to form. Resolve. That's where I was. Not crying. Not shouting. Just quiet. And thinking. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the glow of my screen. Lucas Harlan's name typed into every search bar I could think of. His website was polished, full of credentials and buzzwords. Testimonials, smiling couples, jargon about emotional attunement. Nothing concrete. Nothing dirty. Just the glossy surface. But then I found a link. It wasn't obvious, a dead thread on an old forum for relationship trauma recovery. The post was a few months old. The username was anonymous. But the title read, "My therapist got too close. Now I don't know what to believe." I clicked. The post was long, scattered. But as I read, a chill ran through me. The poster, C.Rose89, described meeting a therapist during a vulnerable period after her separation. She said he was magnetic, compassionate, affirming. He made her feel like someone finally saw through the fog. And then, gradually, the boundary lines blurred. Texts outside office hours. Intimate conversations. A drink, just one, to unwind after a hard session. Then more. One paragraph stopped me cold. He told me I wasn't broken, just unexpressed. That with him, I could evolve into my full self. That no one had ever known me like he did. Emily had said almost the exact same thing to me 2 weeks ago. I created a throwaway account. Username. Look closer. Message. I think I know who you're talking about. I'm not sure if it's the same man, but your story matches something happening in my life. If you're willing to talk, even briefly, please message me. I didn't expect a reply. I got one the next morning. If you're talking about Dr. Lucas Harlan, yes, it's him. And you're not the first. We exchanged maybe 20 messages in total. I never asked for her real name, and she didn't ask for mine. But what she told me filled in all the blank spaces in my own story. He'd done it before. More than once. Always the same pattern. Vulnerable women, strategic praise, slow escalation. Never enough for legal charges. But always enough to fracture homes. Lives. She told me he called her his mirror. He called Emily his answer. I asked if she'd ever gone public. No. I was embarrassed. And afraid. Who would believe a woman accusing her therapist of feelings? But when I asked if she'd be willing to share what she had, a voicemail, a text, anything, she said yes. As long as she stayed anonymous. She sent me a voice note. Not from him, from herself. A kind of audio diary. The first line. I don't know how I got here, but I think he knew exactly what he was doing from the start. I closed my eyes. The recording from Emily's car. The flower charges. The secret meetings. The voice memo from another woman. This wasn't a one-time lapse. It was a pattern. And patterns leave trails. I wasn't going to confront him. Or her. Not yet. I wasn't going to yell or demand or beg. I was going to document. And then I was going to publish. She was humming again. Not loudly, just beneath her breath, while she folded laundry at the kitchen counter. Some old tune from the radio, unplaceable. But the sound carried like a thread through the house, trailing behind her as she moved from room to room. I watched her from the hallway, unnoticed. She had tied her hair up loosely, wore one of my old t-shirts like she used to in the early days. The familiar softness of that moment might have felt like warmth, if I hadn't already seen too much. But now, I knew what lived beneath it. She glanced up, caught me looking, and smiled. You're home early. Wanted to beat traffic, I said, walking in. Need help with dinner? She shook her head. I'm just keeping it simple tonight. The way she said tonight stuck with me, casual, warm, rehearsed. We made dinner together anyway. Pasta. Salad. A bottle of wine she opened without asking. She poured 2 glasses and raised one. To better days, she said. I clinked mine gently against hers. Better days, I echoed. The whole evening felt like an echo. Everything we said, everything we did, all of it reverberated from a version of ourselves that no longer existed. We laughed at a joke Max made. We cleaned the kitchen together. We took turns reading him a story before bed. And all the while, I moved through each moment like a man pacing a stage he built for someone else's performance. The bag was already packed. It was tucked in the coat closet, zipped, ready. Clothes for Max. Papers. Copies of keys. USB with all the files I'd collected. The flash drive labeled simply, for legal use only. In the drawer under the cutlery, I left another one, labeled Emily. I didn't know if she'd ever open it. By 9, she was curled on the couch, legs under a blanket, phone in hand. Want to watch something? She asked. Sure, I said. We watched half an episode of something forgettable. A crime drama, maybe. She rested her head on my shoulder for a moment. I didn't move. You seem better lately, she said. Calmer. I am, I replied. She turned to me. I know things have been weird between us, but I feel like... I don't know. Maybe we're turning a corner. I looked at her face. Open. Gentle. Slightly hopeful. I wondered, in that second, if she truly believed that, or if this was part of the performance. If she thought that by showing this version of herself, she could rewrite the last few months. Maybe she had rewritten them. In her mind. But my version had records. We went to bed early. She fell asleep fast. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The house hummed softly, heater cycling on, wind against the window. I memorized the details, the outline of her back beneath the sheets, the sound of Max breathing through the baby monitor, the quiet weight of silence I no longer feared. Tomorrow would come like any other Monday. She would walk to the porch in her robe, pick up the paper, pour her coffee, and see everything. Not from me, not in my voice, but in newsprint, in bold headlines. Local therapist accused of exploiting patients, sources confirm emotional misconduct. Her name wouldn't be front and center, but her photo, the one from the fundraiser last spring, would be right next to his. And beneath it, the story I helped write. Not out of rage, out of truth. Because that was the only thing left worth handing over. The morning began like any other. Soft light spilled through the kitchen windows, brushing the countertops in that golden way it only did before 8 a.m. Emily stepped onto the porch in her slippers, pulled her robe tighter, and bent down to pick up the paper. Her movements were casual, thoughtless. She'd done this 1,000 times. I watched from the hallway, unseen. She came back in, flipped the kettle on, placed the newspaper on the table. I could hear the gentle clink of her favorite mug, the one with the blue stripe and a tiny chip on the rim. She poured the water, measured the coffee grounds, pressed down the French press. All automatic, all normal. Until she opened the paper. The motion froze. Not immediately, her hands kept moving for a second too long, like they hadn't yet registered what her eyes had seen. Then the page slackened, and everything else stopped. She stared, in silence. I watched the back of her shoulders rise slightly, then drop. Her fingers gripped the paper tighter. Her head leaned closer, scanning, reading every word, once, then again. Her breath grew shorter. I could hear it from the hallway now. Quick inhales, sharp exhales. Her photo from the charity brunch last spring. Lucas beside her, smiling. The headline. Trusted therapist accused of boundary violations, former clients speak out. There was no name in the lead paragraph, but the quote was unmistakable. He told me I wasn't broken, just unfinished. Her words. From our kitchen. Now in black and white. The article detailed multiple allegations, blurred ethical lines, emotional entanglements, misuse of professional trust. It mentioned undisclosed romantic behavior with at least 2 clients. No lawsuits. Not yet. But the tone was clear. It was over. Lucas was finished. And so was she. I stepped into the room. She turned. Slowly. Her face pale, stunned, utterly blank. You did this? I didn't answer right away. I walked to the table, placed a sealed envelope beside her coffee. In here, I said calmly, is everything your lawyer will need. Mine will be in touch today. Ryan. I'm taking Max to my sister's for a few weeks. The bag's in the car. He's already dressed. She blinked, looked down at the envelope, then back at the newspaper, then me. You can't just... I can, I said. And I am. But this article, people will see. They already are. She reached for the newspaper again, as if trying to undo what had already happened. As if reading it one more time would change the words. Her voice cracked. Ryan, please. We can talk. This doesn't have to. It already did. I turned to leave. She didn't follow. At the door, I paused. You have 2 weeks to leave the house. After that, I'll arrange transfer of ownership. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I opened the door, and for the first time in months, the air felt clean. She sat at the table long after I left. The coffee went cold. The paper sagged under her hands. The room, still lit by soft morning light, felt sharper somehow, as if the air itself had turned on her. She didn't move for a long time, not even when the phone buzzed. It was her sister first, then a friend, then an unknown number, then another. She silenced them all. Eventually, she stood, walked down the hall, opened the door to Max's room. The bed was empty. The dinosaur blanket was missing. The Legos still scattered on the rug, mid-assembly. The spaceship they'd been building was half done, waiting. He was gone, but his absence echoed louder than his voice ever had. She sat on the edge of the bed, holding one of his shirts in her hands, clutched it like something sacred. But no tears came. The phone buzzed again. A message from her HR manager. We need to speak. Please call ASAP. The article was spreading. The screenshot had made its way into her office group chat. Someone had already tagged her on Facebook. A neighbor had left a voicemail, just breathing, and then a quiet, "Is this real?" She didn't reply. She couldn't. Instead, she opened the drawer by the sink, found the flash drive I had labeled simply, Emily. She stared at it for a long time, then plugged it in. No dramatic reveal. Just folders, dates, audio files, calendar exports, scanned receipts, her own handwriting and half-finished notes, photos of deliveries, transcripts, voice memos, the words she'd spoken in confidence, now playing back like lines from a film she never agreed to star in. Everything was there. Not edited, not weaponized. Just truth. Clean, calm, undeniable. She pressed stop. Then she sat back and stared at nothing. Outside, the day moved on. A trash truck passed. A dog barked. A neighbor called to a child. The world hadn't paused. Just her. In that house, once hers, once ours, she remained alone. And somewhere down the highway, far enough not to hear her, I drove. Max slept in the back, clutching his toy spaceship. We didn't talk. We didn't need to. There were no goodbyes. No screams. No letters. Just this moment. And the sound of the wind across the windshield.